The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. Africans are calling for African unity. Our leaders nowadays are calling for unity. But one thing that still baffles me is why can't they unite and they have to always sit down and call for it? According to the president of Botswana, Duma Boko, at US African Summit, the Africans, we need to trade more among ourselves. We need to bring each other closer. We have to invest in our young population because the whole world, Africa has the youngest population. And we have to do more business with ourselves. This is the only way we can move forward. This is the only way we can do away with poverty that is worrying the people in Africa. Our leaders always sit down and talk and tell us how they need to do this, how they need to do that. We know the problem of Africa is these borders. Why is it that the African cannot move among themselves freely? Other people come into the continent and they are able to move among us freely, but we can do that. We trade less among ourselves. We trade more with other people. Yet we are expecting that the Africans should move forward. We have spoken for a very long time, but this is the time for our leaders to actually act. Duma Boko is calling for all African leaders to agree to open up the borders so that we can do business among ourselves. We can use the resources in Africa to benefit ourselves. We are poor because we don't trade among ourselves.
We need to bring Africa closer. I was talking to the president of Gabon just a short while ago, and we are agreed now that all the African leaders must find each other. We must trade amongst ourselves. We must open up these vast expanses of market opportunities for people in all parts of Africa. And when we do that, we then are able to raise Africa economically. We are able then to meaningfully transform the lives of the people of Africa. And Africa has a very young population, a very dynamic population. It is arguably the youngest continent in terms of age. In Botswana, the median age is 25. Across Africa, the majority of the population are young people bristling with desire, determination, skill, talent. And so, in the ultimate instance, one of the things we're going to have to do is to develop, to harness these skills, to develop these talents, and it requires us to, in certain instances, completely overhaul our education systems, both in terms of content and manner of delivery. So these are the key issues. What do they mean? They mean we must have durable partnerships between government and the private sector. It means that all the innovation in the private sector must be brought to the fore so that the private sector powers all these initiatives that governments must undertake. And so I'm here in part to encourage these partnerships to make sure that the private sector deploys finance to drive the agenda of development. And digitalization, as I've said, is the pivot point for Africa, for each of the countries on the continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A new chapter under your leadership, Your Excellency. How do you envision the role of digital transformation
and infrastructure of the requisite quality? We do not want certain parts of the country to experience high latency and others are covered sufficiently and there's low latency. We want the coverage to be of the requisite standard across the whole country. So it's important for the government to ensure that this happens. That's the first thing. We must also ensure, because there's the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which saw us recently in Lusaka, Zambia, launched the trade protocol, where we want to have an Africa that trades, and all the countries, all the people, all the producers are therefore able to access this market, Africa-wide market of 1.5 billion people, and they can also aggregate themselves in terms of cooperatives across different localities on the African continent and service for at scale markets that each one of them individually able to service. And so it's going to be very critical for this connectivity to take place, and we will also need interconnectivity. We need these corridors, these trade corridors that we are seeking to construct across Africa to function and function effectively, so that the trade protocol is then given practical expression. Digitalization, which I have termed a pivot point for the economy of Botswana, and indeed it's a pivot point for the entire African economy. This pivot point will create efficiency. It will curb and almost or entirely remove wastage in the economy. It will therefore result in resources that would otherwise go to waste being properly channeled now towards the improvement of the lives of the people. So it is absolutely essential for the digitalization to proceed, to be successful, to reach out to all parts of Botswana and all parts of Africa. And we also must look at the evolving technology, and when we look at our data centers, which we are going to have to build, we now must look at hyperscale data centers, so that there's energy efficiency, that these centers are robust, and that information is also secure, both information at rest and information in transit. So these are the critical considerations that we must have.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
According to Duma Boko, when we do this, we will be able to move the continent ahead. Everybody is pointing fingers at Africa, calling us poor, yet we know we are not poor. The same people that are giving us the narrative that Africa is poor and pushing the young population out of the continent that will stay here and develop the nation and the continent are always in Africa, taking our natural resources. Look at what they are doing in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, simply because they decided to take their resources into their own hands. Africa is not poor. It's the leaders, I don't know why they just do not want to stop the talking and do away with the borders that these people impose on us that is keeping us poor. They all know that these borders are benefiting Yolo Popo, yet the African leader will always talk about these things in their summits and do nothing about it. How do we expect to change the fate of our continent if we are not trading among ourselves? Go to Europe, they are trading more among themselves. Even the Irish Prime Minister once told us that Africa is poor because they have kept us away from trading among ourselves. We have to liberate ourselves. These people are milking the continent, so there is no way they will ever allow us to be on our own if we don't fight that which is keeping us poor. What Duma Boko is calling for is beautiful, but whether the African leaders will agree to do away with these borders, that's another thing. Our leaders are so much aware of the problem. They know the solution, but just implementing the solution is their problem, because they are afraid of what the oppressor will do to them. And that is why we need leaders like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso who will be independent to fight for that freedom that the African is looking for. United we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make African great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world, in Africa, Southern Africa, and in Botswana.